One of the things that has been traditionally the case with Equinix is that we've had this large global platform, data centers where customers come in and connect to each other, and traditionally it's all about space and power and just giving people cross connects, from one cage to another for a variety of different use cases. However, increasingly our platform is becoming more software defined. As we've moved into more IX markets, as we've gone to offering Metro Connect and Ethernet services, and our Cloud Exchange platform has been SDN enabled now for over 3 years. And increasingly, customers are coming to us saying, we want to be able to deploy in your platform, but we want to do it virtually. So how do we do that? So what I wanted to do today was really kind of share with you a little bit about kind of our journey and how we're observing the shift in some of the costs associated with deploying some of these services. Increasingly it's moving from a very much a network, hardware capex, understandable unit cost model into one that is. It requires a baseline of software investment that is fixed to really deliver that online experience and the automation, the network automation associated with that. However, once you do that, the network investment then is lower and variable associated to how you roll it out. And that shift changes the dynamics for how you deploy, how broadly you try to deploy, and what the implications are for vendors and enterprises and network providers and so forth. It really kind of shifts the view here. What that does is it creates a higher bar for entry in terms of what it takes to enter the market and deliver a service. But the extent to which you can then scale it out, your overall costs are going to be lower, especially on a marginal basis. So that creates an interesting set of circumstances. The low-scale players are going to struggle. What you're going to end up with is fewer lower-scale players and more folks that try to go big. And you're going to get new entrants. You're going to get venture capital funding that is going to be software-driven companies that are going to try to scale out services in a much broader manner than ever before. And we've seen some of that already with some of the startups that are coming to play. The lower marginal unit costs enable an interesting dynamic as well. This allows people to start competing with each other across region much more easily, right? So you're not having to justify as much CapEx investment into new regions. You already have the software platform that enables you to offer your services. And so what's going to end up happening is there's going to be a lot more competition amongst folks that never competed against each other before because of that. And then obviously automation is going to drive the user experience and the OpEx reduction. Your people to run the network is probably going to be less, but your investment into the software capabilities from a people perspective is going to change. So what we've seen is there's an increasing premium on having a sizable software development team that can help orchestrate the development and deliver that automation. The user experience is increasingly becoming more important. That's going to be one of the key differentiators for services is making sure that the user experience and the way to make it easy. We talked about this just a moment ago with Mavenir, right? The zero-touch provisioning and the automation becomes really important, and how easy it is to deploy and start using and consuming those services is increasingly more important. To the extent someone has an existing scaled user base is important. If you're starting at 0 versus you're starting at hundreds of thousands of users, you can implement new services and generate growth off of those new services, and that's going to change the dynamics a little bit. We talked a little bit already about the network deployment and management, and then the documentation, online support is a huge part as well. what's interesting is that there's a number of players that are going to try to win in this space. You're going to see the network service providers obviously have been the traditional players in this space, but the cloud providers are increasingly coming in and offering services in this realm. We've seen that from Microsoft recently with some of their WAN offerings, VPN offerings. The network application vendors are going to start offering as-a-service models, and they're already starting to do that, out of our facilities. And then there's going to be those emerging entrants, folks that are coming out. They've got a big idea, they've got a bunch of VC backing, and they're going to create new services and try to disrupt the market. What this does is it changes the value chain to some extent in terms of who buys what, how are the applications delivered, and what is the impact to the value chain. So one of the things that we've seen is that who's paying for the hardware CapEx is potentially going to shift, right? On the enterprise side, it's the cloud providers, it's the MSPs, it's the network vendors that are actually making those initial investments and then offering it as a service. From a service provider perspective, the vendors and third parties are often making those investments and then again charging that as a service. So there's a shift from large CapEx investments to OpEx models for those providers. The delivery of those applications, right? Instead of the physical premise in the enterprise data centers, we're seeing cloud and colo. Instead of the traditional carrier hotels or the MITSOs, the facilities like ours, where it's really carrier dense co-location, where there's a lot of interconnection, the delivery is increasingly being there. We're seeing a lot of growth in that area, and then the fulfillment is moving from physical to virtual. And so what that's doing is the people that figure this out more quickly are going to have a much better opportunity to grow and take advantage of the shifts in the market. So, I think location matters. One of the things that's increasingly challenging as more and more shifts to the cloud is that, not only do you need to have proximity to your users and make sure you can deliver the capabilities to the users, the data has gravity, the applications, where are the applications? I thought the face recognition use case was really interesting, right? Where you have, some of the compute is doing the processing at the edge, and then it's only then talking back into the central services once it's found something. And so that's gonna play out in a number of different ways. Not everything's gonna be in the cloud. Not everything will be at the edge. There's gonna be the right place to put the data and the compute, and where those applications reside is important. Cloud connectivity, not one cloud is, as much as AWS would like to own all the cloud business, that's not likely going to happen. We see that the clouds have differentiation. They're offering different services. There's more specialization in cloud services. And so increasingly being able to move between clouds is critically important. As data may sit in one cloud, an application may sit in the other, how quickly can you make sure that data interacts to solve that problem? Latency is critically important as well, right? So as those apps and data, wherever they sit, making sure that the users or the systems that need that information can access that information quickly is really important. We talked a lot about the CapEx costs and the changing dynamics there. The time to market and integration, being able to spin up new services quickly is a key factor. And more, from a vendor perspective, what we're seeing is more and more customers are wanting options and not one size fits all. And so having the capability to deliver new offerings and new services based from different vendors, we see as an important factor. And then having kind of a holistic end-to-end approach is critical from an NFV perspective. So where are we taking this? At Equinix, we see a number of opportunities to serve our customers in different ways. One is that we are starting to build a platform that enables different network functions within our facilities to allow customers to establish virtual points of presence within our platform with which they can start to do interconnection off of. So this is a shift for us in terms of our traditional, you buy a performance hub, or you buy your cage and rack and stack whatever gear you want to put in it, and then you're off and running. And that sort of worked, for the enterprises and service providers and CDNs and so forth. What we're seeing increasingly is that customers want a more dynamic virtual option. And so we're working with providers to enable them to offer new services based upon kind of traditional enterprise-oriented VNFs. This could be firewall, router, load balancer. We're also looking at how we can enable customers to use our platform as an extension of their own services. This could be SD-WAN services. This could be, EPC. This could be a number of different categories. And then we're also working with a number of our vendor partners for them to enable their platforms as a service using NFV as the basis for that. And we see that already. Ericsson has their CDN as a service platform being delivered off of Equinix. Nokia has their Wing IoT solution that they're offering, and there's a number more that I can't discuss publicly. But increasingly, what we're seeing is more and more as a service capabilities being delivered out of Equinix based upon the proximity that we have to the enterprises and the clouds and the CDNs and the network providers and such. So our goal is really to support a number of different use cases where it makes sense based upon our proximity to the different entities that participate in our ecosystem. So you'll see continually a gradual increase in different use cases around a number of these different areas. Welcome you guys to get engaged with us and chat with us about how we might be able to, if you're a vendor, how we might be able to help deliver some of your capabilities to our joint customer base. And if you're a service provider, how we might be able to help you extend your capabilities more broadly, leveraging our platform. We're in 52 markets globally, 200 plus data centers. And what we're seeing is a lot of interest in folks that want to extend their services maybe outside their core markets, and we think we can help enable that. We will be providing more and more information about kind of our new offering. This is not being marketed broadly quite yet. You'll see us start to push this out in 2019 in a more broad way, but I figured this is a great opportunity to get in front of this audience and start the dialogue sooner rather than later. So with that, there's a handful of minutes left if there's any questions. Otherwise, we can get ourselves back on track. Yes, sir.
Did I understand correctly that you are the customer of the NFV software vendor, and then you charge the user?
In some cases, yes.
Or is it more a hosting model?
Well, so we're developing, we're rolling out the platform to do the hosting, and then we're working with the vendors to offer their services either in a bring your own license model, or we might be charging the customers on a subscription basis for that software, depending upon who the vendor is and what the use case is.
So you expect a variety of models?
Yes.
That's what I understand. Okay,
yeah.
Thank you.
It's not a one-size-fits-all from what we've seen. The very large enterprise or the service providers, they have strong relationships with a lot of these vendors already. They already have, their pricing negotiated. We're not going to, add additional value in that category necessarily, but what we do is provide a place for them to deploy their network functions and extend their reach based upon where our platform is located. But there is a category of enterprise lower down that will want to just buy this, in much like the Amazon model, the Microsoft model, where I just want a virtual router and I'm going to pay for it on a monthly or minute by minute kind of basis.
I have one.
Sure. Yeah.
Thank you. I was wondering, you know, as you're working on evolving your infrastructure to support these new offers,
Yeah.
are you encountering, you know, sort of a shift in what you need to offer from an SLA or, you know, a verification perspective with the customer who's now decided to host a VNF in an Equinix platform compared to what you've done before?
Yeah, so that's an interesting question. So, you know, I think from a traditional service provider perspective, their point of view, right, is they want to have as consistent a model as possible. They already offer SLA commitments to their customers and so forth. But then you juxtapose that with the sort of lack of SLA of the clouds, right? Those guys basically offer a service. It's there if you want it. You know, they're not going to give you much SLA at all. Right, and so it creates an interesting dynamic in the market where, you know, the end customer, you know, it's going to vary depending upon, you know, is convenience, you know, more important than having the service assurance. Obviously, the platform needs to be there. You know, the platform's got to be, you know, highly resilient and highly available, and we will provide, you know, SLAs around that. But we're being cautious. With respect to how deeply we get into the SLA business, primarily because the clouds have already set an expectation that you don't really need an SLA, and our lawyers are kind of thinking that, you know, if we don't have to, then why would we, kind of thing. So it'll be an interesting journey. I'm being pretty open about kind of our internal thought process there. We are getting asked for that by some customers, and others don't care.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.